My name's Tom Fontanes. I'm originally from the Bronx, New York City. Grew up in New York. I joined the Marine Corps in actually 1966, straight out of high school, Dewey Clinton High School, and I joined the service very patriotic, and the idea that really got me serve the country was Kennedy, Camelot, where he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country," and that was big for me. I actually joined the military when I was 17. I had to get my parents' signature, which is a whole different story. But I went in, did boot camp in Paris Island, and my original MOS was an 06 something, which is aviation ordnance. Went to aviation ordnance school, Jacksonville, Florida. Graduated, came out, did some time in the duty station in Guantanamo and Gitmo. After that, that was in '67. I graduated from the school in '67. Went to Guantanamo and got my orders for Westpac, which was Western Pacific, which was Vietnam. Everybody spoke about it, and at that time, everybody was either going to Nam or back from Nam. That was the cycle, especially in the Marines. I actually went to Dewey Clinton High School, and the big claim to fame with Dewey Clinton High School was that Burt Lancaster went to that school. And we had in the gym, we had pictures of Burt doing all the push-ups and sit-ups and jumping jacks, so that was a big thing for us. But I was in, as I said, in Guantanamo, and got my orders for Westpac. And that was in '68. In February of '68 was the big Tet Offensive, and the big escalation for the United States, obviously. So I got to Vietnam in August of 1968. When I got there, they said, "We don't need aviation ordnance, we need grunts, 0311 ground pounders." So that's where I went through Vietnam. I went through a big operation, Taylor Common, which Taylor Common is known for breaking the back of the Tet Offensive. I got wounded, lost a bunch of friends during that time. Got medevaced and finished my tour in Okinawa. Came back to the States, and it was during the Nixon administration. Went under Johnson, President Johnson, and came out under President Nixon, and he started de-escalation and Vietnamization, and that's where the Vietnamese started, the South Vietnamese started taking over, and they started pulling the American forces out of there. But I came back, started going to Hunter College under the GI Bill, met my wife there. We got married, moved to California in 1976, bicentennial, and during that time, I worked for New York Telephone when I got out of the service and finished, came out here and started working for Pac Bell. And after 33 years, I retired and got a good package, so I figured I have to get all my ducks in a row. Went to the VA to start medical and everything else. Met another Marine there that did orientation. He started asking me these questions, and I remember thinking, how does he know all these things about me? So he said, I think you have PTSD. So I told him, I said, I don't have PTSD. It's just, I'm a New Yorker. I'm paranoid anyway. He was asking me things like, do you go around your house and check all the doors at night? Are you hypersensitive to people? Is it hard for you to make friends? I said, that's you're describing a New Yorker. So I went. He says, you got to see a psychologist. So I went to see it because I had to get as I said, my ducks in a row. It was a woman's psychologist. She started asking me all these questions. I actually broke down. She knew just what buttons to hit. So I found out I had PTSD. Got diagnosed with it. Went to the VA and started joining different groups, sleep therapy, sleep management, different things. I joined this poetry group, which was creative writing. We actually collaborated together. We wrote a book called Castrated Hearts, PTSD. I started doing art. I've always done art since I was little. I drew and crayons and coloring books, but I always did my own creative work. When I came back, I started finding out that drawing and painting was a way to emote all these demons that I had inside, the nightmares and stuff. The more paintings I did, the less. It was almost like a drug. The more painting I did, the less these things bothered me. So I was getting them out instead of men. We tend to compartmentalize things, and that was helping me release those. So it was a good thing, and that's where we get to some of my art for the show. This is actually a copy of one of the ones that I originally did. The original one was in marker and pen and pencil and stuff. But it's just three basic concepts. It's the sky behind, the actual soldier in the helmet, and to me now, when I did it, I just did it. I didn't realize, I think one of my big influences was Peter Max. It was more like a Peter Max type thing to me anyway, plus some of the other ones I did. But it's just the sky which represented the world. That's what we call in Vietnam. Getting back to the world, you know, getting back home is getting back to the world. That's the world in the background. The helmet, of course, is the military aspect, the old World War II style, steel pot, as we used to call it, very handy. And then the actual soldier, that's the sky, the infinity. Looking at it now, looking at it decades later, you know, I can see it's almost like asking to be filled in. It's almost like we're, the whole concept of a tabula rasa, that we came back with a blank slate and fill it in. When I got back, it was almost, it wasn't that I was getting back to my cultures, like I hit a different culture. Everything was completely different to me, my perception. So it's almost like I had to readapt to it. So that's what this represents. Actually, this one is one of the ones I did lately. I did this one specifically for the Veterans Administration. They have an art competition every year around February, so I did that one, this one for this year. And it's basically, I did everything. It wasn't a frame. A lot of people think, oh, where'd you get that frame? It was just wood. And I made the frame. I have different concepts. It's very, to me, this is very Marine Corps, spirit de corps, fortitude, and leatherneck, which is one of the things that we're called, and Semper Fi, the motto of the Marine Corps. I used, and if you can see, it's actually the same figure that I did in my first one, but it's almost like I have filled it in post-Vietnam. And these are all like alphanumeric phrases and words that, to me, represent Vietnam. Taylor Common, which was the operation, AK-47, fire base, clicks, which is for kilometers. That's what we call it when you see 10 clicks, that's 10 kilometers. The MBM Phu, which is one of the places, the history when the French Indochina War, that we were there. NVA, Agent Orange, of course, the World, Huey. So if you look at it and you read it, it's all, and I did it in a crossword type motif that represents some of the aspect, which was hard. It was kind of fun putting all that together because you got to match the words, which made me think. This one over here, it's almost the same concept. I did both of these for the show, that had different categories, so that was more for almost like craft. This one's more, this is all a wood burn. People think sometimes that, you know, that's brown color. It's actually burned in, it's a pyrograph. So this is, again, this is very Marine Corps. The saying over here for tuna fortunes, Huvat, which is fortune favors the brave, which to me that was with the Marine Corps. Different Bible scripture. This one, Proverbs 6:27 to 28. Look that up. That to me represents what PTSD and basically says, can a person put his hands into a fire and not be burned? So if you've gone to Vietnam, you may, it's almost like sticking your hand in a fire. You may have a 1st degree burn or a 3rd degree burn, but you're burned. So it depends on what the intensity of your experience there. This is a leaf, and it just forms soldiers. The head of Lady Liberty, which I grew up being in New York. I grew up with Lady Liberty. That's just part of my growing up. Marine Corps symbol, different aspects, Hueys, and a B-52 dropping bombs, and a fighter, and a soldier there. And in there I have a symbol, which is a mirror image of PTSD. If you take, here you can see it says PTSD, but I put it in a mirror, so it almost looks like an abstract. Almost look, I call it my crop circle of concept, but that's what that is. 0311, 5.56, which is the caliber of the M16, the weapon we used there. Kilo Company, which was the company I was with, and this is in Greek letters. I like to use different language letters from other languages, basically Hebrew and Greek, but this is Greek, Pi Tau Sigma Delta, which is PTSD, because that's always, I always recognize that that's just part of my experience. It's almost like being an alcoholic. Alcoholic, you can stop drinking and you're an alcoholic and recover. You never stop being an alcoholic. And the same thing with PTSD. You just deal with it, and you deal with it. Some people deal with it better than others, but you're always dealing with it. Okay, this one is a little bit more abstract. The focus of the piece is the outline of the soldier, and that represents all different things of the culture. It's Untitled because I didn't have a name for it because it represented so many things. It had the American Gothic in there. It had a church, a map of New York, just some cinema. I'm a big movie buff, cinema icon. Robbie the Robot and Maria. She appears in a lot. I don't know why. She appears in a lot of my things. She's from the movie Metropolis, 1920 or something, German. But have Untitled. If you artists out there have Shepard Fairey, who's known. That's Obey. That's Andre the Giant. Very abstract. Even the young kids. I meet young artists all the time, and they refer to him instead of Shepard Fairey. They refer to him as Obey. Oh, that's the artist Obey. But there's a whole bunch of things. I don't know if you can see it on the tape, but it's very layered. And besides pyrographs, I do multimedia collages. So it's a collage of paper, plastic, and metal. It represents different things. I have a clock that's abstract, it's sort of bending. It's very, for me, it's Salvador Dali. I have stamps in there. But all of that represents different aspects of the culture. I have like a record set. That was one of the big toys when I was a kid that I loved on a record set. I put dictionary, little pages from dictionaries, or sometimes Bible quotes. I have Peter Max, a whole bunch of things, stamps. People don't realize. I always tell, money has beautiful art on it, and so do stamps. People don't realize. You kind of just lick a stamp and you put it in there, but it's some beautiful art, very, very detailed. But that's what this represents, just an old cityscape. That's like when I grew up. That was from the Bronx. That's the way most of the streets looked like when I was growing up. So I'll move to the next one. And this is basically just icon, I call it. Actually, that one, let me just bring this up real quick, is a smaller version of this one. And this is my icon, which I use. You can see the American, that's a soldier I saw in Time magazine decades ago. And it was just a soldier, and just the look in his eyes, you could tell. To me, he's a strong guy. I could tell by the flak jacket that he was a Marine. Most of us, the Army guys, they have a flak jacket that almost looks like a life preserver. The Marine was just a vest with two pockets. He's a Marine. He has an M16. I thought that was very telling. The two soldiers, the two people with the gas masks, I don't know what that means, but I knew it had to be there. There's Maria from the movie Metropolis again, a Zeppelin. I like to use a lot of geographic shapes, circles, squares. That square has my brand on it, which is non-vet, or NVA, which is Vietnam Veteran Artist. That's what that stands for. And I have like a maze, which is the way sometimes I see the world. Of course, the head of Lady Liberty, she's always in my pieces. In fact, I wonder if those two are related in some way. But anyway, that's Lady Liberty. And here's the first, one of the other artists that influenced my style is Salvador Dali. And the first piece that I ever saw by Salvador Dali was the Crucifixion. I saw it in the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's huge. I've always had that. And over the cross, it's INRI, which is in Greek. That was one of the and it's, they didn't have a J, they had an I, so it's Jesus of Nazareth, Rex, King, and again of the Jews. So that was one of the signs that was over it. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, INRI. This is Hebrew. As I said, I like to use a lot of Hebrew and Greek, Latin, different. I use Morse code. I use different languages. One of the pieces, one of the other artists that interests me, Jean-Michel Biscayet, and what he said, which I sort of took, what he'd do, he'd put words and then he'd cross them out. And they asked him, why do you do that? And he says, because if they're crossed out, it attracts people. People, what is that? And it draws them, and with your art, that's what you want to do, is draw them into the piece, not just look at it and move on. A lot of times if you have something in it, they look, what is that? And it draws them in, it makes them curious at the piece, and they start looking all over. This is the face of the Shroud of Turin, which was the shroud that Christ was wrapped in. This is the thorn. This is angelic, just the angels. Angels. These are some of the geographic. Got these from this. This is from a sci-fi magazine, and this is a tetragrammaton, which is very abstract. In fact, one of the concepts is that every Hebrew letter is in tetragrammaton. You could turn it in different positions, and you'll see a letter in Hebrew. This is interesting because not only is it's one of my pieces, I've done this over and over, and I've had people buy it. This is my icon. When I do a show, I hang that up, and usually that attracts people, among other things. And it's not only, it's on my card, my business cards, which are handmade. On the back of it, I have the information. I use stamps, that's stamps, and I use a regular postage stamp. And I also stamp it with ink stamps, and it has that, so it has a double meaning as far as that's concerned. One of the things that I mentioned was, besides painting art, I had also I joined a poetry group, and we did together, we collaborated, and we did a book called Castrated Heart, PTSD, People Traumatized, Shadowing Darkness. So that was what the acronym stood for. One of the pieces that's in the front that I'd like to read is called basically PTSD. And it goes, PTSD, PTSD, a clinical condition, I need to be free. P is for post, as in the dangerous past, sometimes not noticed, it happens so fast. T is for trauma, a life-giving, a life-threatening event, followed by thinking, why was it sent? S is for stress, a psychological crush, the body meets with an adrenaline rush. D is for disorder, in great disarray, no longer consistent, the order has strayed. Those are the meanings of PTSD, but knowing them all won't help you get free. Half the solution is recognizing the problem. Why are you so angry, distrustful, and solemn? Know that you're different, not who you were once. Now any situation has you ready to pounce. Even your loved ones, you know who they are. Remember they love you even though they seem far. Show that you love them despite your condition. It's a thing of the heart, an act of volition. Recognize the disorder. It's not them, it's you. It's because you were chosen, you're one of the few. You're a survivor by God's mercy and grace, and now you know that death has a face. That face is Medusan, where each lock is a snake. Each snake has a name, and each name is a fate. What are those names, you ask me indeed? I'll summarize them for you. They're PTSD.
All right. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Oh, here's you.